After she pays for my trip, I'll throw her in a nursing home. Those words pierced through me like a knife. I was standing still, clutching the cordless phone in my trembling hand, as if the world had suddenly stopped spinning. My heart pounded so loudly that I thought the neighbors could hear it. The voice on the other end was crystal clear. My daughter-in-law, Laura. She hadn't realized the call was still connected. She thought she was safe to speak her cruel truth, but I heard every word. I froze in my kitchen. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the wall clock, the warm evening sun slipping through the curtains. All of it faded into the background. My ears rang with her laughter, sharp and cold, echoing through the receiver. She's so gullible, Laura went on, her tone dripping with disdain. She just gave me $8,000 without even blinking. Imagine, $8,000 from an old lady who thinks we actually enjoy her boring stories. I nearly dropped the phone. My knees buckled, and I sank into the nearest chair, holding the receiver against my chest as though it could shield me from her venom. For 72 years I had lived with dignity, with love, with sacrifice for my family. And now, the woman I thought of as my own daughter was mocking me behind my back. Michael thinks we should wait until after the trip to bring up the nursing home thing, Laura continued. But I'm sick of pretending to care about her. Once we're back tanned and refreshed, it's time. I've already found 3 facilities that take Medicaid. Medicaid? My breath caught. I wasn't broke. I had savings, investments, even a fully paid house. Why would she be researching Medicaid unless she planned to drain me dry first? My son Michael. My only child. The little boy who once brought me dandelions clutched in his tiny fist, calling them roses. The boy who cried when he squashed a bug, saying life was precious. Now he was a man, agreeing with his wife to put me away like I was nothing. I pressed the phone tighter, unable to let go, even though every word shattered me further. She repeats her stories, forgets her keys, Laura scoffed. Everyone will believe she's slipping. It'll be easy to prove she needs supervision. Then we'll get her house, her savings, everything. $500,000 at least. Not bad for putting up with her whining a few more weeks. Tears welled in my eyes, blurring the sunlight streaming across the counter Harold had built with his own hands 35 years ago. My late husband's laughter still lingered in these walls, and now his son was plotting my downfall. I whispered to myself, no, not Michael, not my own blood. But Laura's cruel chuckle silenced my hope. The best part? She'll probably thank us. She's so desperate for approval, she'll convince herself we're doing it out of love. We won't even feel guilty. Her words burned me alive. Every hug she'd given me, every sweet, I love you, Mama Lane, every smile at my cooking, was it all a performance? Was every kind gesture calculated, rehearsed, and fake? The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the table, but I could still hear her laughter buzzing from the speaker like a venomous bee. My hands shook violently. I tried to breathe, but the air was too thick, heavy with betrayal. I reached for my checkbook lying nearby. Just 2 days ago, I had written a check for $8,000 to the travel agency. A gift. A blessing from me to them. I thought I was helping them heal their marriage, giving them joy. Instead, I had unknowingly funded the trip they would celebrate before casting me aside. The irony was cruel, but it awakened something inside me. My chest no longer felt hollow. A cold fire began to burn. I wasn't weak. I wasn't helpless. And I certainly wasn't going to let them decide my fate. Slowly, I stood from my chair. My legs wobbled, but my resolve steadied me. I walked to the old wooden jewelry box Harold once used for important papers. Behind my grandmother's pearls, I found the card I had saved for years. Margaret Doyle, estate attorney. Laura wanted to play games with my life? Fine. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. For the first time that night, my hands no longer trembled as I reached for the phone again. That night I couldn't close my eyes. Every time I tried, Laura's words echoed in my head like a cruel lullaby. After she pays for my trip, I'll throw her in a nursing home. The sentence scratched against my heart over and over until it felt raw. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, tracing the same crack in the plaster that Harold used to joke about fixing. But he wasn't here anymore. He'd been gone 5 years, and all I had left was Michael. Or so I thought. I turned to the empty side of the bed and touched the pillow, still cool and untouched. I whispered, Harold, what would you do if you were here? Would you believe them capable of this? My own voice broke in the quiet, and tears spilled down the sides of my face into my hair. Images flooded my mind. Michael at 5 years old, running across the yard with scraped knees, yelling, "Mom, watch me! Watch me!" Michael at 10, nervously holding up his science fair project. Michael at 20, hugging me after college graduation, whispering, "I'll never forget everything you've done for me." And now, Michael at 45, silently agreeing to throw me away like yesterday's newspaper. I wanted to believe Laura was twisting him, poisoning him, feeding him her bitterness. But hadn't she said, "Michael's already on board"? My chest tightened again, and I had to sit up, gasping for air. At 2 a.m, I padded barefoot to the kitchen. The house was silent, almost too silent. I used to complain about the noise, the TV blaring, Harold singing off-key while shaving, Michael bringing friends over. Now the silence felt like a punishment. Every tick of the clock reminded me how alone I really was. I sat at the table with a cup of tea, but my hands shook so badly the spoon clattered against the mug. I wasn't shaking just from fear. I was shaking from betrayal. The people I had loved, trusted, and given everything to had measured my worth in dollars. My house, my savings, my life insurance. Laura had calculated it all like I was already gone. I thought about the diamond earrings Harold gave me on our 30th anniversary. I had handed them to Laura one afternoon when she admired them, thinking she'd treasure them as I did. She never gave them back. And the china set, my grandmother's heirloom, I insisted she take it because she said she'd use it more. But she locked it in a cabinet like a trophy. One by one, I had given pieces of myself away. My treasures, my money, my love, and now they were planning to take what was left, my independence. The realization hit me like a slap. I had been desperate to be loved, so desperate that I ignored the signs. The eye rolls when I told a story. The way Laura's smile never quite reached her eyes. The little sighs Michael gave when I called too often. The teapot whistled too loudly, and I flinched. My own house suddenly didn't feel safe. I wrapped my arms around myself, whispering, "They think I'm weak, but I'm not weak." I walked to the living room and picked up the phone again. Margaret Doyle's card felt warm between my fingers, as if Harold himself had left it for me. I dialed her number, but when the machine picked up, I froze. What would I even say? "Hello, my family is plotting to discard me?" Would anyone believe me? Or would they laugh, the same way Laura had laughed? I put the phone down and sat in the dark, staring at Harold's photograph on the mantel. His eyes seemed to meet mine, calm and steady, as if urging me to fight. By sunrise, I was exhausted but resolute. I pulled on my sweater and went to the garden, Harold's garden. The roses were wilting because I hadn't watered them in days. I crouched down, touching the soil, feeling its dryness, and whispered, "I've let too many things wither. Not anymore." I stood tall, the morning air filling my lungs. I knew what I had to do. If Michael and Laura thought they could decide my fate, they were about to learn how wrong they were. I wasn't going to be a victim. Not now. Not ever. The next morning, I stared at my reflection in the mirror longer than usual. My hair was gray, my face lined with the years of laughter and sorrow, but my eyes, they weren't weak. They were sharp, awake, burning with something that had been missing for a long time. Fear and anger had lit a fire inside me. I dressed slowly, choosing Harold's favorite blue cardigan, the one he always said made me look dignified. My hands trembled as I buttoned it, not from weakness, but from the weight of what I was about to do. The phone felt heavier than ever when I dialed the number on Margaret Doyle's business card. The line rang, and I almost hung up, my throat tightening. What if she didn't believe me? What if she thought I was just another old woman with paranoia? But then Margaret's calm, professional voice answered. "Doyle and Associates, this is Margaret." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My voice cracked when I finally whispered, "Margaret, this is Elaine Carter. You handled my husband's will years ago. I need your help." There was a pause on the other end, then a gentle shift in her tone. "Elaine, of course I remember you. Are you all right?" The question broke something in me. My voice wavered, and I gripped the phone tighter. "No, I'm not. Can I see you today? It's urgent." She didn't hesitate. "Come at 9. I'll clear my morning for you." When I hung up, Relief washed over me, but it was tangled with fear. This wasn't just about protecting money. This was about protecting my life, my freedom, the very essence of who I was. I barely touched my breakfast. The toast sat cold on the plate, the tea untouched. I wrapped my shawl tightly around my shoulders and left the house. Every step to the bus stop felt like carrying a weight. I used to drive everywhere, but Laura once suggested I give up my car, saying, "It's safer, Mama Lane, you're not as quick as you used to be." At the time, I thought she was caring. Now, I knew it was just another chain to make me dependent. On the bus, I sat by the window, staring at the passing houses. Mothers walking children to school, men in suits rushing with coffee cups, young women with headphones. Life around me was moving fast, but mine had slowed into this terrifying stillness where the people I trusted most had turned into strangers. When Margaret's office came into view, I nearly lost my nerve. My palms were sweaty, and my heart thudded so hard it hurt. The building looked the same as 5 years ago. Calm beige walls, tidy windows, the kind of place where serious matters were decided. Inside, the receptionist smiled warmly, but I still felt like every eye was on me. "Miss Doyle is expecting you," she said. When Margaret stepped out to greet me, I saw that time had touched her too. She looked older, silver in her hair, but her eyes still held that firmness I remembered. She led me into her office, the scent of leather and paper surrounding me. "Elaine, please sit," she said softly, noticing the way my hand shook. "What's happened?" The words tumbled out of me before I could stop them. I told her everything. The call, Laura's laughter, Michael's betrayal, the talk of Medicaid homes, the calculations of my worth. Tears slid down my cheeks as I spoke, but Margaret didn't interrupt once. She listened, pen in hand, her jaw tightening as the details grew darker. When I finished, I felt drained, hollow. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of the clock on her desk. Then she leaned forward. "Elaine, I have to ask something hard. Do you have any memory problems? Confusion, lapses? Anything they could use against you?" The question stung, but I straightened my back. "No. I forget my keys sometimes, but who doesn't? I'm 72, not senile. My doctor said I'm in excellent health." She nodded. "Good. That's very important. Now, what do you want me to do?" I wiped my tears and forced myself to answer. "I don't want to confront them yet. I want to protect myself first. I need to make sure they can't touch my money or force me into a place I don't choose." Margaret's lips curved into a small, approving smile. "That's smart. We'll start with your estate. Who has power of attorney?" "No one," I admitted. "Harold and I never set one. After he died, I didn't think I needed it." "That's actually a good thing," she said. "We'll fix it now. We'll create a trust, lock your assets, and write clear instructions about your care. And we'll arrange medical proof of your competency. If they try to fight you, they'll lose." Her confidence steadied me. For the first time since the phone call, I felt like I wasn't drowning. Someone was on my side. But deep down, a small voice whispered, "What about Michael? Was there still a trace of the little boy who once clung to me during thunderstorms, or had he vanished completely into the man Laura molded?" I didn't know. But I did know one thing. I wasn't ready to surrender. The ride back home from Margaret's office felt like a blur. My hands rested on my lap, still trembling, but my heart was beating with a different rhythm now. Fear was still there, yes, but it had been joined by something stronger, clarity. I finally saw what Laura and Michael were planning, and now I had someone in my corner to help me fight back. When I stepped into my house, the silence welcomed me again, but it didn't feel exactly the same. Before, it was heavy, suffocating. Now, it was like the silence of a battlefield before the storm. Quiet but full of tension. I hung up my sweater and walked slowly to the living room. Harold's photo on the mantel caught my eye. His familiar smile seemed to remind me that he had trusted me to be strong, to be smart. I sat in my chair, the same one where Harold used to read the paper, and closed my eyes. My thoughts pulled me back to memories I had buried. Times when Laura had looked at me with that perfect smile, her hand resting on mine, but her eyes scanning the room. Times when she had leaned in to compliment me, and I had felt proud, only to later realize she wanted something. I remembered the day she admired my grandmother's china. Her voice had been soft, almost wistful. "I never had anything special growing up," she had said. "This set is just beautiful." And without thinking, I had pushed it toward her. "Take it," I said, smiling like a fool. "You'll use it more than I do." She had protested weakly, just enough to make me insist harder. Then she accepted, her eyes shimmering with gratitude that now I knew was nothing more than a performance. The truth hurt. Every single act of kindness I had offered her had been used against me. I thought I was giving love. She was collecting trophies. As I sat there, my chest tightened, and tears stung my eyes. But I refused to let them fall this time. I wiped them away and whispered to myself, "No more. No more giving pieces of myself away." The next few days passed like I was living in two worlds. On the outside, I smiled and nodded whenever Laura called to check in. She sounded so sweet, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Mom Elaine, are you sure you're eating enough? You forget sometimes, don't you?" she asked one evening. I forced a laugh. "I'm fine, dear. Don't worry about me." Inside, though, I was boiling. Every question was a trap, a way to paint me as forgetful, as weak. Michael didn't call. That silence hurt even more than Laura's fake sweetness. My son, the boy I had raised alone after Harold passed, was gone. I tried to tell myself that maybe Laura was pulling the strings, but the memory of her saying, "Michael's already on board," was too strong to ignore. By Wednesday, Margaret had already begun drafting papers. She wanted everything ready before Laura and Michael left for their European trip. "We'll secure your accounts, lock your assets, and make sure no one can move you anywhere without your consent," she explained over the phone. Her calm, steady voice was the rope I clung to while standing on the edge of despair. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my checkbook open in front of me. My eyes rested on the faded ink of the $8,000 check I had written. I remembered Laura's excited squeal when I handed it to her, the way she hugged me so tightly, whispering, "You're the most generous woman in the world." My chest ached at the memory. I thought it had been love. It was greed. I closed the checkbook with shaking hands. My gaze fell on the window above the sink. Outside, the garden Harold and I had planted together was still standing, though some of the roses had wilted. That garden was like me. Still alive, still strong though neglected. The next morning, I forced myself out of bed early. I made coffee, watered the roses, and stood under the rising sun. For the first time in months, I felt a small sense of control. My legs might ache, my hands might tremble, but my mind was sharp. Laura thought she could trick me. Michael thought he could stay silent. But they didn't know me as well as they thought. I wasn't the weak old woman they had imagined. I was still Elaine Carter. A woman who had built a life, raised a son, survived a husband's death, and carried the weight of loneliness without breaking. And now, I was preparing for a different kind of survival. As I stood there, the morning breeze touching my face, I whispered a promise to Harold, to myself, and to the roses in the garden. "They think they're planning my ending, Harold. But they're wrong. This story isn't ending. It's just beginning." The days that followed felt like I was living in two different lives. On the outside, I kept playing my role, the loving, grateful mother-in-law who couldn't stop praising Laura's kindness. But inside, every word she spoke to me sounded like poison. I could hear her voice from that phone call in my head, mocking me, laughing about how gullible I was. Each time I smiled back at her, it wasn't because I believed her. It was because I was acting too now. On Thursday afternoon, the phone rang. I already knew it would be Laura. She had been calling almost every day. Her tone was syrupy sweet. "Mom Elaine, are you absolutely sure about covering the travel insurance too? It's just $300 more, but Michael thinks it's safer." My jaw tightened. $300 wasn't much compared to what I'd already given them, but the way she asked, so entitled, so confident I'd just hand it over, made my blood boil. Still, I forced my voice to stay warm. "Of course, dear. I want you both to have peace of mind while you're away." Her laugh came through the receiver, fake and light. "You're such an angel. Really, I don't know what we'd do without you." The moment I hung up, I wanted to slam the phone against the wall. But instead, I placed it gently on the table and took a deep breath. They couldn't know I had figured them out. If they sensed I was suspicious, they might move faster. Margaret's words echoed in my mind. Protect yourself first, confront later. Friday morning, Laura came over before their trip. She was glowing, her hair freshly styled, her nails perfect, her sweater soft and new. Even her purse looked like it cost more than a month's worth of my groceries. She hugged me tightly, pressing her perfume against my cheek. "Mom Elaine, thank you again for this trip," she gushed. "It means the world to us. Michael has been so stressed, and this will really bring us closer again." I poured her coffee, using my second-best china. Not the good set. Never again. She sat across from me, pulling out a small jewelry box with a flourish. "I saw this at the store and thought of you." Inside was a cheap necklace, the kind you'd find at a discount counter. $30 at most. I stared at it, smiling politely, even as bitterness surged inside me. I had spent $8,000 on their vacation, and this was her token of gratitude. "It's lovely," I said softly, slipping it back into the box. "Thank you, dear." Her smile widened as if she had given me diamonds. Then she leaned forward, lowering her voice. "While we're gone, maybe you shouldn't stay all alone in this big house. I could ask my sister Hannah to check in on you. Maybe even stay over a few nights if you get lonely." I felt my stomach drop. Hannah. Laura's sister. A spy. Someone who would peek through my mail, look in my cabinets, maybe even hide things to make me seem confused. I forced another smile. "That's thoughtful, but I'll be fine. I have my book club, my garden. Plenty to keep me busy." Laura's eyes narrowed just slightly before she shrugged. "If you change your mind, let me know. Hannah's happy to help." When she finally left, I sat by the window and watched her drive off in the car I had helped them buy. My hands clenched into fists. Every kindness I had shown her, every dollar, every gift, every sacrifice, had only taught her to take more. That afternoon, I kept my appointment with Dr. Williams, the specialist Margaret recommended. The waiting room was full of elderly people with their children. Some looked genuinely cared for. Others looked like they were being managed, treated like burdens. My stomach twisted as I realized that's exactly how Laura and Michael saw me. Dr. Williams was kind but thorough. For 2 hours, she tested my memory, asked me questions, gave me puzzles to solve, even asked about current events. I focused harder than I had in years, determined to prove myself. When we finished, she looked me straight in the eye. "Elaine, your cognitive function is excellent. Your memory, reasoning, and judgment are strong. If anyone tries to question that, I'll stand behind this evaluation." Tears stung my eyes. "Thank you, doctor. You don't know how much this means." She patted my hand. "I think I do." That evening, I called Margaret and told her the results. She sounded pleased. "Perfect. We'll add the report to your file. They won't have a leg to stand on if they try to challenge you." I hung up and leaned back in my chair, staring at Harold's photo again. For the first time since that awful phone call, I felt a flicker of power return to me. Yes, I was old. Yes, I was alone. But I wasn't powerless. The next step was to make sure Laura and Michael discovered something they had never expected. That the woman they thought they could manipulate had more strength in her than they ever imagined. The Saturday morning sun poured gently into my kitchen, but the warmth didn't reach me. I sat at the table with a notebook in front of me, the pages already covered in Margaret's instructions written in my shaky handwriting. Step by step I had to take back control of my life. I stared at the first line. Visit bank. Remove Laura as contact. It sounded so simple, but the thought of walking into the bank, of saying out loud that I wanted my daughter-in-law removed, felt heavy. For years, I had proudly told people how lucky I was to have her. I used to brag about how thoughtful she was, how much she helped me with finances. The lie was so well rehearsed that even I had started believing it. But now the truth was clear. Every time Laura offered to help, it was another string tied around me, pulling me tighter into her control. I pulled on my cardigan, tucked my purse under my arm, and left the house. The short drive to the bank felt longer than usual, the streets blurring past as if my mind couldn't focus. When I walked through the glass doors of First National Bank, I immediately spotted Robert Chen, the manager who had handled my account since Harold's death. "Mrs. Carter," he said warmly, standing from his desk. "It's always good to see you." His kindness nearly broke me. For a moment, I wanted to sit down and confess everything. That my own family was plotting to take everything I had. But Margaret's voice echoed in my mind. "Be careful. Protect yourself first. I need to update some account details, I said softly, lowering myself into the chair across from him. Of course, he replied, pulling out a folder. What changes would you like to make? I took a shaky breath. I want to remove my daughter-in-law from my emergency contacts. And I'd like to keep my financial affairs private from family members moving forward. Robert's eyebrows lifted slightly. I see. May I ask why? Last time we spoke, you mentioned how helpful Laura was. The shame in my chest felt like fire. I forced a polite smile. I've decided it's better this way. Simpler. I just want to keep things private. He studied me for a moment but didn't press further. For the next hour, we went through every account, every record. My hands trembled as I signed the forms, but with each signature, I felt something shift inside me. A lock clicking shut, a barrier building between me and the people who thought they could control me. When we finished, Robert leaned back. Mrs. Carter, I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you safe? These changes are sudden. If you're experiencing any financial abuse, we have resources. His words nearly undid me. My throat tightened, and for a moment I couldn't speak. Abuse. It was such a heavy word, one I'd never dared apply to myself. But wasn't that exactly what this was? Emotional manipulation, financial exploitation, betrayal by those I trusted most? I swallowed hard and forced a smile. Thank you, Robert. I'm just being cautious. As I left the bank, the air outside felt fresher, cooler. Step 1 was done. The next stop was the locksmith. Margaret had been insistent. If they have keys, Elaine, they have access. They can move things, hide things, make you look confused. The locksmith, a friendly man named Dave, arrived that afternoon. Changing all the locks? He asked cheerfully as he carried his tools inside. Yes, I replied. It's time. He got to work, chatting as he installed new deadbolts. You'd be surprised how often I do this for seniors, he said casually. Sometimes family members take advantage, use the spare keys to sneak in, mess with things. My stomach clenched. His words felt too close to home. While he worked, I wandered into the guest bedroom, the room Laura and Michael used whenever they stayed overnight. I hadn't stepped inside in weeks. The bed was neatly made, but as I pulled back the blanket, I noticed something strange. A folder tucked under the mattress. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside were printouts of nursing home websites, notes written in Laura's neat handwriting, lists of my assets, estimated values of my house, even calculations of how long my savings would last in care facilities. I flipped through page after page, my stomach churning. There was even a business card for a lawyer who specialized in emergency guardianship. My vision blurred with rage. And then I saw it, a note scrawled in the margin. Ours doctor appointment. Ask about memory concerns. Try to get official documentation. My knees nearly gave out. Laura had been planning to go with me to my next checkup. She wasn't going to support me. She was going to feed lies to my doctor, to create a paper trail of confusion that didn't exist. My heart hammered. I gathered the folder, stuffed it into my purse, and clutched it to my chest like a lifeline. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was proof. Proof that everything I had overheard wasn't just cruel words. It was a detailed plan. When Dave finished changing the locks, I thanked him with trembling hands. You're safer now, he said kindly, not knowing how true those words were. That night, I sat in my living room with the folder spread across the coffee table. Each page was another knife in my back, but each one also fueled my determination. I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't losing my mind. They were plotting against me, and I had caught them red-handed. I called Margaret first thing the next morning. My voice shook as I explained what I had found. She listened quietly, then said firmly, Elaine, this changes everything. This isn't just suspicion anymore. This is evidence. Her voice gave me strength. What do we do next? I asked. We'll secure your finances, lock the trust, and add this evidence to your file. If they try to challenge your competency, we'll show this. It will destroy their credibility. For the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. I hung up the phone and looked around my house. The silence was still there, but it didn't feel like danger anymore. It felt like preparation. My home wasn't a prison. It was a fortress now. Laura thought she was clever. Michael thought his silence would protect him. But they had underestimated me. And that mistake was going to cost them everything. By Tuesday morning, my nerves had finally steadied enough to move forward with the next step. Margaret had arranged an appointment with Janet Morrison, my longtime financial advisor. Janet had worked with Harold and me for years, back when we were still planning our retirement trips, back when life felt safe and predictable. Now, walking into her tidy office, I felt both comfort and a heavy sadness. She greeted me with her usual no-nonsense warmth. "Elaine, it's been a while. Margaret called me yesterday. She said you'd be making some important changes." "Yes," I said quietly, settling into the chair across from her. "I want to move everything into the trust. And I need to change my beneficiaries." Her eyebrows lifted. "That's a significant decision. You currently have Michael listed as primary beneficiary on all accounts. Savings, investments, even your life insurance. Are you sure you want to change that?" A sharp pain tugged at my chest at the sound of my son's name. For a long moment, I couldn't answer. Memories of him flooded my mind. The child who used to hold my hand crossing the street, the teenager who once promised he'd always take care of me. But those memories clashed with the cruel reality. Michael, the man who now sat silently while his wife laughed about throwing me away. "I'm sure," I finally said, my voice steady. "I want to leave something for him, yes. But not everything. Not anymore." Janet's expression softened, and she gave a slow nod. "That's wise, Elaine. Too often people assume their children will use inheritances responsibly. Unfortunately, that's not always the case." We spent the next 2 hours going through every detail. I redirected most of my estate to charities that had long mattered to me. The local animal shelter, the library's literacy program, and a fund for seniors who needed help with medications and home care. I left Michael a portion, but only under strict conditions. For the first time in years, my financial legacy felt like mine again. Not Laura's, not Michael's, but mine. When Janet closed the folder, she smiled at me. "This is one of the most thoughtful plans I've seen. You've balanced family with community. That's rare, Elaine." I forced a small smile, though the truth burned inside me. If only she knew the real reason behind these sudden changes. By the time I returned home that afternoon, exhaustion pulled at my bones. I had barely sat down with a cup of tea when the doorbell rang. My stomach tightened. Through the window, I saw a familiar figure. Hannah, Laura's younger sister. Laura had warned me. "Hannah will check on you while we're gone," she'd said sweetly, but I knew better. Hannah wasn't here to check. She was here to watch. To gather. To dig. I opened the door, forcing a warm smile. "Hannah, what a surprise." She stepped inside, holding a casserole dish. "Laura asked me to drop this off. She worries you might not cook enough for yourself." The word stung, though I kept my smile intact. "That's thoughtful. Come in, please." She followed me into the kitchen, setting the dish down before scanning the room with a curious eye. Her gaze lingered on the counter where my mail sat, then shifted toward the hallway where the medicine cabinet was visible. "How have you been, Elaine?" she asked lightly, her voice rehearsed. "Sandra says you've had a few memory slips lately. That must be scary." My heart skipped, but I didn't let my face show it. "My memory is fine," I replied gently. "Sometimes I misplace my keys, but don't we all?" She gave a sympathetic smile that felt more like pity. "Of course. Families just worry, you know? Especially when someone lives alone in a big house like this. So many responsibilities." Every sentence she spoke was a seed, carefully planted to make me doubt myself, or worse, to be repeated later as proof that I wasn't capable. "Would you like some coffee?" I offered, playing along. "That would be lovely," she said, settling at the table. As the kettle boiled, she tried again. "You must get lonely here. I mean, it's such a large house. Have you thought about downsizing?" I stirred the sugar into her coffee slowly, giving myself time. "I'm comfortable here. It's home." She took a sip, her eyes flicking toward the hallway again. "If you ever want, I could help organize your medications. It looked a little cluttered in your cabinet." My stomach turned. There it was, the real reason she was here. To get her hands on my pills, to accidentally misplace them or rearrange them until it looked like I was confused. "That's kind of you," I said evenly, placing the cup in front of her, "but I have my own system." For the next hour she chatted, her voice light and pleasant, but her questions too pointed. "What time do you usually go to bed? How often do you drive? Do you ever forget appointments?" Every word was a test, a probe, a trap. When she finally left, smiling as though she had just paid me a friendly visit, I locked the door behind her and leaned against it, my knees weak. The performance had been exhausting, but I knew I had played my part well. I immediately picked up the phone and called Margaret. "She was here," I said breathlessly. "Hannah." She asked about my memory, my house, even my medication. Margaret didn't sound surprised. She was conducting surveillance, gathering evidence for a possible competency challenge. "Document everything," she said. "Word for word if you can." That night, I sat in my living room with a notebook on my lap, scribbling every detail of Hannah's visit. The casserole she brought as an excuse, the way her eyes darted to the mail, the innocent questions. As I wrote, the pattern became clear. They weren't just planning. They were testing the waters, laying groundwork, preparing their attack. For a moment, fear threatened to crush me. But then I looked at the folder of evidence Laura had left behind, at Margaret's neat legal documents stacked on my desk, and at my own handwriting recording every manipulation. They thought they were the hunters. But the truth was, they had already walked straight into my trap. And the longer they played their game, the more evidence I would have when it was time to fight back. 2 weeks passed like I was living in a different world. Without Michael and Laura around, my house finally felt peaceful. For the first time in years, I could move from room to room without bracing myself for a sly comment or a fake smile. I could water my roses, sit with my book, even hum in the kitchen without worrying who was listening. But peace, I knew, wouldn't last. They returned on a Sunday evening. By Monday morning, Laura was on the phone, her voice bright and cheerful. "Mom Elaine, we're back. We had the most incredible time. Paris was magical. Tuscany was like a dream. We can't wait to show you the pictures. Can we come over this afternoon?" I made my voice sound warm, almost eager. "Of course, dear. I'd love to see you." When I hung up, my hands tightened around the receiver until my knuckles went white. I had to play this carefully. At exactly 3 o'clock, their car pulled into my driveway. I watched from the window as they stepped out, tanned and glowing, shopping bags dangling from their arms. Laura wore a new dress, her hair styled in a way that screamed money spent. Michael carried souvenirs, his face relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Mom," he said warmly when I opened the door. "Thank you again. This trip was exactly what we needed." He hugged me tightly, and for a split second, I felt the old Michael, the boy who used to bring me dandelions. But as soon as he let go, the memory evaporated, replaced by the reality of the man who had stood by silently while his wife plotted my life away. Laura followed, pressing a kiss to my cheek. "We brought you gifts. A scarf from Paris, olive oil from this tiny village in Italy. Isn't it lovely?" I smiled politely, accepting the bag. "Beautiful. Thank you." We sat in the living room, and soon Laura launched into a detailed story of their adventures. We took a cooking class in Lyon. Michael actually learned how to make soufflé. And the wine tour in Tuscany. "Oh, you would have loved it." Her words floated around me, but I barely heard them. I watched her gestures, the sparkle in her eyes, the careful pauses she used to make herself sound gracious. It was a performance, and I knew the real show hadn't started yet. Finally, Laura shifted on the couch, exchanging a look with Michael. My chest tightened. "Here it comes." "You know, Mom Elaine," Laura began, her tone soft and serious. "We've been doing a lot of thinking about family and the future. About what's best for everyone." Michael nodded, his voice taking on that careful tone. "Mom, we worry about you. This big house, all the responsibilities. It's a lot. And living alone at your age. It's risky." I said nothing, keeping my face neutral. "There are these wonderful senior communities," Laura continued eagerly. "Not nursing homes, but more like resorts. Beautiful apartments, gardens, libraries, even spas. You'd have independence, but also safety. Professional staff, 24 hours a day." She pulled out her phone and scrolled quickly before holding it out to me. Smiling elderly people in staged photos filled the screen. "Look at this one. Sunny Meadows. It's only 20 minutes from our house, so we could visit all the time. Isn't it perfect? I studied the photos, my lips curving slightly. It does look very nice, I said calmly. Michael leaned forward. Mom, it would take such a weight off your shoulders. You wouldn't have to worry about maintenance, about being alone. Dad would want to know you're cared for. The mention of Harold was a knife to the heart. They were using his memory now, twisting it for their plan. I looked between them, keeping my voice steady. And how much does this cost? About $4,000 a month, Michael said quickly. But your house, worth $300,000 at least, would cover years. And your savings, of course. You've always said you wanted your money used wisely. This would be an investment in your well-being. There it was, the real reason. My money. My house. My life, reduced to figures in Laura's careful calculations. I leaned back in my chair, pretending to consider. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this. Laura's eyes lit up. We have. We love you so much, and we only want the best. We've even made a few inquiries. Just to check availability. Nothing binding, of course. I nodded slowly, my face calm though inside, my blood boiled. And when were you thinking this might happen? Sooner rather than later, Michael said, his voice hesitant. It's better to make the transition while you're still healthy. Easier to adapt, you know. At your age. That's what he meant, though he didn't say the words. I sat quietly, letting the silence stretch, watching their confidence grow. Laura squeezed Michael's hand, already certain of her victory. Finally, I leaned forward, my voice firm. I've made my decision. Both of them straightened, anticipation bright in their eyes. I've decided, I said slowly, that anyone who would plan to throw me in a nursing home while I'm paying for their European vacation is someone who doesn't deserve to inherit a single dollar from me. The room fell into silence so thick I could hear the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Laura's mouth fell open. Michael blinked rapidly, as though my words didn't make sense. Mom, what are you talking about? Michael stammered. I reached into the side table drawer and pulled out the folder. My fingers were steady now, stronger than ever, as I slid it across the coffee table toward them. I'm talking about this. Michael picked it up, his face pale as he flipped through the pages. Laura's notes, her calculations, the printouts of facilities, the business card for guardianship. His hands trembled. Laura, what is this? Laura's face turned white, then red, then white again. You were snooping through my things? I raised my chin. You forgot to hang up the phone that day, Laura. I heard every word. And this, I pointed to the folder, proves it wasn't just talk. Michael's voice cracked. Laura, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't. But Laura's composure was cracking, her voice sharp. I was just researching. Preparing. It's called being responsible. Your mother is getting older, Michael. She does forget things. She does repeat herself. We were planning for the inevitable. My hands curled into fists. The inevitable? Or the moment you could legally steal everything I worked for? Michael looked like he might be sick. His voice shook. Mom, I swear, I didn't know about all this. I met his eyes, cold and unflinching. You knew enough. You agreed I was a burden. You agreed it was time I had professional supervision. Don't pretend your silence makes you innocent. Laura finally snapped, her voice rising. It's family money, Elaine. It was going to be ours anyway. We just wanted to manage it responsibly. Her mask was gone now. No more fake sweetness, no more careful charm. The greed in her voice filled the room like poison. Michael buried his face in his hands. My God. I stood slowly, my legs shaking but my voice steady. You will never get another penny from me. You will never control my house, my savings, or my life. Try to fight me, and you'll learn just how prepared I am. I pointed to the door. Get out. They sat frozen for a moment, then Laura grabbed her purse, her face twisted in rage. Michael followed slowly, his expression full of something between shame and sorrow. As the door shut behind them, silence filled the house once again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't dangerous. It was victory. The house stayed quiet for 3 days after I threw them out. Not a single call from Michael. Not even a message. I knew it wasn't over. Laura wasn't the type to give up after being cornered. She was wounded, humiliated, and that made her dangerous. On the fourth morning, I found a letter tucked under my front door. My stomach sank as I unfolded it. The words blurred as my hand shook, but I forced myself to read. Notice of petition for emergency guardianship. Laura had filed in court, claiming I was mentally unfit to manage my own affairs. My throat went dry. There it was, the nightmare she had planned all along. She wanted legal control over me, over my life, over everything I owned. I called Margaret immediately, my voice trembling. It's happening. She's filed. Margaret's tone was steady, firm. Good. Let her. We're ready. Ready. I whispered, my knees weak. Elaine, she said, her voice like steel. You have evidence. The folder, the notes, the evaluations from Dr. Williams. And you have me. She thinks you're defenseless, but she doesn't know we've been preparing for this. Don't panic. This is where we win. The hearing was set for the following week. Each day leading up to it felt like I was walking through water, heavy and slow. Laura didn't call, but Michael did. His voice on the phone was hollow. Mom, I didn't want it to go this far. Laura thinks this is best. I closed my eyes, swallowing the ache in my chest. Best for who, Michael? For me or for her? He didn't answer. After a long silence he muttered, I'll see you in court, and hung up. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. A soft blue blouse Harold had always loved. A pearl necklace he had given me on our 25th anniversary. My hands shook as I fastened the clasp, but my heart beat steady. I wasn't walking into that courtroom as a victim. I was walking in as a woman who had survived, who still had her dignity. When I entered the courtroom, Laura was already there, looking polished and professional. She wore a tailored suit, her hair pinned back, a binder full of papers in front of her. She looked at me with that same fake smile, but this time there was something sharper in her eyes. Triumph. Michael sat beside her, shoulders hunched. He couldn't meet my gaze. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Laura's lawyer spoke first, painting a picture of me as frail, confused, vulnerable. Mrs. Carter has exhibited signs of memory loss, he said smoothly. She has misplaced important documents, repeated herself during conversations, and required financial assistance from her family. It is clear she is no longer able to manage her affairs independently. Every word felt like acid. Lies, carefully twisted around grains of truth. Then Laura took the stand. Her voice trembled just enough to sound convincing. We love Elaine dearly, she said, glancing at the judge with wide, sad eyes. We only want her safe. She forgets appointments. She leaves the stove on. She gets confused about her bills. We fear for her well-being. I gripped the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. My entire life, my independence, was being reduced to a performance by the woman I had once called my daughter. Then Margaret stood. Calm, confident, her presence filled the room. Your Honor, she said firmly, we have evidence that paints a very different picture. One by one, she laid it out. The folder I had found under the mattress, Laura's own handwriting, detailing plans to place me in a nursing home and calculations of my assets. The business card for the guardianship lawyer Laura had contacted weeks before any of this. The notes about my doctor's appointments, instructing her to ask about memory issues. And finally, Margaret said, lifting a file, a professional evaluation from Dr. Williams, confirming that Mrs. Carter's cognitive abilities are fully intact. She is of sound mind, capable of managing her affairs. There is no medical basis for this guardianship petition. The judge's eyebrows rose as he examined the documents. Laura's face drained of color. Those are private notes, she snapped, her composure cracking. She stole them. Margaret's voice was like a knife. You don't get to cry theft when the only thing stolen here was Elaine's trust. These aren't private musings. These are plans. Cold, calculated plans to strip a competent woman of her freedom. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Michael buried his face in his hands. Laura tried to recover, her voice high and shrill. She's twisting everything. I was only being responsible. I was protecting her. The judge's gavel struck sharply. Enough. He looked at me then, his eyes steady. "Mrs. Carter, would you like to speak?" My legs trembled as I stood, but my voice was steady. "Your Honor, I may be old, but I am not weak. I am not confused. I am not a burden to be hidden away. My daughter-in-law and my son saw me as a problem, and they wanted to solve it by locking me away and taking everything I built. But I will not let them. I've lived a long life, I've buried a husband, I've raised a son, and I've stood on my own 2 feet every day since. I deserve to live the rest of my life on my terms, not theirs." Silence filled the room. For once, Laura had no words. The judge nodded slowly, then turned to her lawyer. "This petition is not only unsupported, it borders on malicious." "Denied," Laura gasped. Michael looked up, his face pale. The gavel came down again, and just like that, it was over. I sank back into my seat, tears blurring my vision. Margaret placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Elaine," she whispered. As I walked out of the courtroom, Laura's voice followed me, sharp and bitter. "You'll regret this, old woman." But her threats no longer pierced me. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt free. This battle was won. But I knew the war for my peace wasn't quite over. Not yet. After the court ruling, the air around me felt lighter, almost as if the chains Laura had tried to fasten around me had finally snapped. For days afterward, I walked through my house with a strange new sense of freedom. The silence no longer weighed me down. It comforted me. Every room, every picture on the wall, every little crack in the floorboards belonged to me. Not to them. But the aftermath wasn't without noise. Michael called once, his voice low and heavy. "Mom, I'm sorry." I sat in my armchair, holding the phone to my ear, staring at Harold's picture across the room. "Sorry for what, Michael? For standing by while your wife planned to throw me away? For letting her speak about me like I was nothing?" His voice cracked. "I didn't know it would go that far. I didn't think." "That's the problem," I said firmly. "You didn't think. You didn't protect me. You forgot the woman who raised you, who gave you everything. Silence is as cruel as action, Michael. You chose her over me. And that choice has consequences." He sobbed quietly, but I ended the call. I wasn't cruel. I was tired. Tired of excuses. Tired of betrayal. Laura, on the other hand, didn't stay quiet. She sent angry messages, left voicemails dripping with venom. "You think you've won? You ruined Michael's future. You ruined our marriage. Everyone knows you're manipulative. Everyone will see the truth." But the truth had already been seen, in a courtroom, by a judge in her own handwriting. I deleted every message without responding. She had lost her power over me. Meanwhile, Margaret and Janet helped me finish the last of my protection. My will was finalized, my trust was secured, my bank accounts were locked tight. Every loose thread Laura might have pulled was tied off. My house became more than a fortress. It became a statement. Weeks passed, and something unexpected began to happen. The women from my book club, the neighbors I had politely waved to but never really spoken with, began reaching out. Word had spread. Not the ugly version Laura had tried to spin, but the truth. People knew. And instead of pity, they offered respect. One neighbor, Mrs. Green, stopped me in the grocery store. "Elaine, I heard about what you went through. You're stronger than most people I know. Don't ever doubt that." For the first time in a long while, I smiled and truly meant it. One evening, as the autumn sun dipped low, I sat on my porch with Margaret. She had become more than a lawyer. She had become a friend. We sipped tea as the sky turned pink. "You know," she said, "what you did wasn't just for yourself. You stood up for every older person who's ever been treated like they don't matter. That courtroom saw the truth. You're not weak. You're not disposable. You're a person with a voice, with rights." Tears pricked my eyes, but they weren't sad ones. They were full of pride. "I only wish Harold could have seen it," I whispered. Margaret smiled softly. "I think he did." Later that night, I sat at my desk and began to write a letter. Not to Laura, not even to Michael, but to myself. A promise. I promised to never doubt my own strength again. I promised to guard my peace, my dignity, my independence. And I promised to remember that love is not proven through sacrifice alone. It must be met with respect, honesty, and care. When I finished, I folded the paper and tucked it into Harold's old Bible. It wasn't for anyone else to read. It was mine. Months passed, and life grew quieter. Michael eventually stopped calling. Laura disappeared from the edges of my life. And though that loss hurt in ways I can't fully explain, it also gave me space to heal. I filled my days with books, with gardening, with long walks through the neighborhood. I even volunteered at the library again, reading to children on Saturday mornings. Their laughter filled the hollow parts of me that grief and betrayal had carved out. One afternoon, a little girl hugged me after story time and whispered, "You remind me of my grandma. She's the nicest person I know." I closed my eyes, hugging her back tightly. In that moment, I realized that family isn't always the people bound to you by blood. Sometimes, family is the love you choose, the people who respect you without expectation. And that became the true lesson of it all. Not everyone you call family deserves your trust. Age doesn't mean weakness, and kindness should never be mistaken for foolishness. Love is precious, but it must never be blind. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. That night, as I sat by the fireplace, Harold's photo beside me, I whispered aloud, "They thought they could take everything, but I still have the most important thing, myself." And for the first time in years, the silence in my home wasn't frightening. It was peace.